Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Politics NY as we have a debate for the upcoming primary election, which is August 23rd, right here in the state of New York. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jane Hanson from Schneps Media, along with Steve Witt, who is joining me as a co-moderator this evening. Hey, Steve, how are you?
Good evening, Jane. Good evening, everybody else and the candidates.
Yeah. And Steve's going to be, in addition to asking questions, he will also be the timekeeper tonight. So he's going to keep us all honest by making sure we're not violating time codes, okay?
And that being said, I'm liberal. I'll let you run a little over, but I give it a hand when it's time. That kind of means wrap it up. And then if I do it twice, that means like I'm going to like say, hey, time.
Time is up. So there you go. But you guys are used to that, I think, by this point. So a little bit about our format this evening. Opening statement from each of you, 2 minutes long. Then there'll be a round of questioning that Steve and I will do. And with each question, if somebody else is being questioned, 1 minute for the answer. But then if somebody else wants to interject or have some kind of a rebuttal, they will also have a minute to do so. We will also have a round where, if we have enough time, we will have each of you ask the other a question, and then a closing statement, also 2 minutes long. Again, depending upon the time, we might have to limit it to 1 minute, seeing how we go and how far we are. Let me introduce everybody who's here this evening. We do have the incumbent for District 25, which, by the way, is parts of Brooklyn from the Navy Yard to Brownsville. Of course, the reason we're having the August primary is because of the redistricting that took place. So do I have that right? Right?
Yes.
Okay, good, because it's been confusing for me. I can't even imagine what it's been like for all of you. So our incumbent is State Senator Jabari Brisport, who is a former teacher, and he is also, we talked a few weeks ago, and I know that you are a gay man who has one of the first elected to the state Senate in the state of New York. And now let's go to Conrad Tillard, Sr., who is an American activist, minister, professor, and has been known as the hip hop minister. But
many years ago.
You're currently a pastor in Bed-Stuy, and you are here running for Senate District 25. Renee Holmes is an educator in New York City, worked for the Department of Ed for quite some time, and also ran a youth program, was a youth coordinator. So all three of you with terrific credentials. It's wonderful to have you here, and we're so grateful you are. Thank you. Let's do our opening statements. Let's start with Senator Brisport.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Stephen, and thank you to Schneps for having me on tonight and for hosting this debate, and thank you to everyone that's in attendance. So my name is Jabari Brisport. I'm the current state senator for Brooklyn's 25th State Senate District. It's a beautiful and diverse district. And for those who don't know, before I was a state senator, I was a public school teacher. I taught middle school, and I saw firsthand the effects of underfunding and disinvestment from our public school system. I saw my students not have textbooks, be in an overcrowded situation where they had to eat lunch in the classroom, do gym in the hallways. And beyond the disinvestment in our schools, I saw the effects of housing instability and gentrification on our district. I had students that were housing unstable. I had one student who was tired all the time because every night she was sleeping in somebody else's house and had no home of her own. And understanding that these were not issues just for my students or even just at my school, but systemic issues were a reason why I ran for office. And I'm proud to know that in my first year as a state senator, we allocated billions of dollars in additional funding for public schools to invest in our students. We also helped keep people in their homes with an eviction and foreclosure moratorium and invested billions of dollars into tenant protections and into the housing market. But it also is not lost to me that these are not just victories of my own. These are not just Jabari victories. These came because the people of our district in Brooklyn stood up and demanded more. And it's clear to me that when we fight together, we win. And that's something I look forward to doing next year, is working with the people of this district and of Brooklyn to keep on fighting to guarantee not only victories in education and housing, but to ensure that every single person has healthcare, that we invest deeply to fight against the climate crisis, that we ensure that every single person can have childcare, and so much more. I want to work together, and I look forward to doing so. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate that. Now let's go to Renee.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to being here. I would like to say that I am glad to be here, and I'm running to represent the 25th district because it's a wonderfully diverse district culturally and economically. I am a former New York City NYCHA resident who had the opportunity to become a homeowner. I am also a former New York City public school teacher who ran a successful youth program. And my students, despite the disparities that we had in funding, which was rampant throughout District 13 and 16, we were still able to ensure that my students in the school that I work with, that the students performed in the top 1% of the city and were able to get prestigious seats, even in the specialized high schools. I come from a family of union members, military personnel, active and retired, and as well as educators. I am running to be your next state senator from New York City because it's time for better. We cannot just enact policies and don't receive the funding in our community. It's time for us to make sure that workers have the opportunity not only to work here, but to live here, because we can no longer ask them for their talent and their labor, but don't provide a decent place for them to stay and a safe place for them to stay. We can't ask our seniors to work and they are not allowed to retire here because the cost of care is too high. So we have to do better. We have to have schools that reflect the fact that we're living in 2022, that provide our students with a wonderful education that is not only technological savvy, but also academically, that prepares them with a liberal arts education, that prepares them to compete globally, not only locally, but globally. And we also have to have criminal justice reform that addresses the inadequacies in this system without compromising safety. We want to make New York State a viable option. That's what I believe, a viable option for our citizens, a place where they can live, where they can work, where they can play and raise a family, where they can retire, where retiring here is an option.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. I'm sorry, just the opening statement. I raised my hand a couple of times.
Okay, I didn't see you raise your hand.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'll wave that way.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And now, Reverend Tillard, please.
Well, good evening, and I certainly want to thank this wonderful news organization for sponsoring this conversation so that the wonderful people of the 25th can hear from the candidates that are stepping forward. I want to thank my fellow candidates, people who are citizens and who are taking a risk and throwing their hat in the ring. But most of all, I want to thank those who are listening tonight, civically involved residents of the 25th that care very much about who represents them and have decided to take time out of their busy schedules to be here tonight. I'm Conrad Tillard, and I am a candidate for the 25th Senate District. Of course, my title, vocationally, I'm a pastor, and I've been known in this city as Minister Conrad, Brother Conrad, Reverend, Pastor. Yes, formerly, because of my work with young people, with gangs and rappers, the hip hop minister. But my vocation is that of service, and I see running for office as a mere extension of that. I've lived in New York City and been a leader in this city for 34 years, and I've lived in the 25th Senate District for 24 years. I've lived in Fort Greene. I've lived in Clinton Hill. And the better part of that time, I've lived in Bedford-Stuyvesant. And I'm running because this is a fabulous district. It's very diverse. It goes from, you called it the Navy Yard, I like to call it Fort Greene, but it extends all the way out to Brownsville. And I'm excited about the opportunity to represent Brownsville, because for the first time, they have essentially a contiguous district where they would have a senator and not several senators representing them. And I look forward to working with their great Assemblywoman, Latrice Walker. And so I am running because the people in the neighborhoods that I have lived in and the people I talk to, they're concerned about three things. They're concerned about public safety, they're concerned about good quality schools, and they're concerned about affordability. And I look forward to having that conversation this evening.
All right, you've gotten the wave, but we will talk about all of those, I guarantee you. So let's go ahead.
Tonight, if it's okay, Jane.
Sure, please.
Senator Brisport, you're a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. And I'm wondering, and you also support the good cause eviction. And there's many Black property owners and brownstone owners in Brooklyn, and they're concerned about that. Do you support their home ownership? And do you believe in private property and home ownership? And can you explain your views on good cause eviction? That there's some pushback that small property owners feel it could hurt them. So I'd like all your views on that. I shouldn't say Senator Brisport, all your views on home ownership in the district and good cause eviction legislation. Which, yes, and we'll start with you, Senator.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Stephen. I'm a huge supporter of the good cause eviction legislation. As you know, Stephen, we are seeing double-digit rental increases inside of our district, with some parts of the district, such as Prospect Heights, seeing increases as high as 40 or 50%, when people being kicked out of their homes, essentially, by rents they cannot afford. When we talk about gentrification, we're talking about Black people being pushed out of Brooklyn because the rent is too damn high. And good cause eviction would allow tenants to challenge these unjust rent hikes. As you also know, I think you know, Stephen, the bill exempts owner-occupied units of less than 4 units. And I think it is a good bill to address the needs of both tenants, of homeowners, which is why my office has received hundreds of emails in support of it and people asking us to pass it. And I am of the belief that it was because of the influence of the real estate lobby that the state legislature was unsuccessful in passing it. And that's why my campaign has sworn off real estate money. But in terms of homeowners, I've had a chance to be with my partners in government, not only extending an eviction moratorium, but a foreclosure moratorium, so they're not being impacted by banks harassing them to foreclose on their homes. This year, we allocated billions of dollars in tax rebates for homeowners. And you actually just caught me. I just came from an event with HPD. We were doing an event for homeowners earlier in Stuy. We have the homeowner handbook, so homeowners can learn everything that they need to help them out, and reach out to my office if you have any questions. And last thing I will say that I know deed theft is a huge scourge in our community, which is why I had a chance to testify at the borough president's office in favor of the legislation we passed in the state legislature to make all of Brooklyn a cease and desist zone, so that homeowners will stop getting harassed by predatory private equity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Holmes.
You're on mute.
The good cause eviction law must make sure that we are not jeopardizing homeowners, because some homeowners do have buildings that are for families. So to exempt them in Bed-Stuy, some of the buildings are for families. So we need to look at the demographics of our buildings when we're making laws. And also, we do need to make sure that we're fighting against gentrification. But we have to make sure that when we have developers developing buildings in our community, that they are making their prices of these apartments aligned with the income that's in the community, not so much with what the developer wants to develop. And also, with reference to deed theft, yes, the legislator has put out a lot of money and it has enacted laws, but a lot of homeowners still have not received that money. So what's the point of us allocating billions of dollars if the homeowners are not receiving it? What's the point of us having laws on the books if they're not going to be enforced. Deed theft is a crime, and we need to make sure that the prosecutors are prosecuting deed theft, and that's not happening.
Thank you.
One of the things that a senator has to do is to be able to work collaboratively. Senator Brisport promised and that he would advocate, that he would pass good cause eviction. But the fact of the matter is, many of the African-American legislators in Brooklyn and throughout different parts of the city do not support good cause eviction. It's not that they're not open to it, but what they resent is those who have sponsored the bill and support it not willing to sit down with them to fix the parts of the bill that are not in the interest of Black and brown wealth. I've been meeting with homeowners, a group of property owners called the Small Property Owners of New York. And these are people who have small buildings. One lady said, well, we've got 100 units. She said, but we're small because when it snows, I have to go out there, my sister and I, and shovel the snow. Our parents left us this building as a legacy and wealth. And I have heard testimonies from this organization about the insensitivity of Senator Brisport, where they have said that it has actually become unprofitable for them to rent units. And when they become available, they take them off the market because the onerous burdens of good cause eviction as it is presently constituted have made it not profitable for them to rent. In fact, one man almost brought me to tears. They said that they met with Senator Brisport and told him that they were losing money, that it was impossible to maintain these units on the market. And they asked me, I said, well, what did he say to you when you told him your plight? And much to my surprise, they said he told them that they would have to eat the loss. And I think lastly on that point, Senator Brisport is on record saying he does not believe in private property. And that is not consistent with the aspirations of the people in the 25th. I'm a renter. People who are renters now, they one day aspire to be homeowners. And we have to create that hope and continue to talk about how to make home ownership more available to more people.
I'm assuming you would like to respond to that, Senator Brisport.
Sure. On 2 points. One, the Reverend just alluded to Black legislators not being in support of good cause eviction. And I just want to clarify the record. The 25th State Senate District overlaps with Black Assemblywoman Farrah Safran Forrest, who supports good cause eviction, Black Assembly member Latrice Walker, who supports the bill, Black City Council members Crystal Hudson and Chi Ose, who support good cause eviction, Black Congress member Hakeem Jeffries, who supports good cause eviction. So I'm just curious which Black legislators who overlap with the district don't support the bill. And if I can also just respond to the comments around Spony, I had a chance to meet with them and can flat out deny that I made the statements that they're claiming I do. They also recorded the conversation, so they would be able to show video of me saying those things if they happened, and they did not.
Well, let me just say, you asked which Black legislators do not support good cause eviction, and two I'd like to bring up because there are actually three, including Latrice Walker. Because as I understand it, and I did witness this at the VITA meeting, many of your supporters came to the home of Stephanie Zinnerman, our assembly person. And there she lives with her grandmother and her mother. And you brought supporters there, and they were rude and they were loud and they were seeking to intimidate. I understand the same thing happened to Lori Cumbo and Latrice Walker. I witnessed this happen at the VITA meeting. When you came to the meeting to present, you were very congenial, as you generally are. And you told VITA that you had to slip out early. And when they allowed you to speak and you left, 30 or 40 folks that clearly had just moved to Bedford-Stuyvesant came in and disrupted the meeting. And so what I'm saying, Senator Brisport, is that sure, there are some Black legislators who do support good cause. There are others who do not. But it didn't pass. You didn't get the bill to be brought to the floor. And what I'm saying is the senator in the 25th has to work collaboratively with people in order to get something done. And that's what I will do when I'm in the Senate.
It looks like Renee has something she would like to add to this.
I'd like to respond again to the accusations, please, after Renee.
Yes, of course.
One thing we must do is we can't continue with putting voters against voters in this district if we want to make sure that our district is a place where people can live and work together. And that is a dangerous thing that is occurring, and we need to stop it because it's no good for anybody. Bills are not being passed, and the people are suffering with this infighting. One thing I would like to say, the homeowners are not the reason for New York City not being affordable.
Right.
One thing we talked about, deed theft. Deed theft needs to be enforced. And another thing we need to do, one thing is we have a lot of liens, water liens, tax liens in central Brooklyn. One thing I would do as your next state senator, that will be taken off the table because that has been used to disenfranchise people, selling these water liens. You will sell somebody's house for $6,000, the city or the state with a water lien, and then the investor were able to sell that property for $1 million. That should not happen. Mm-hmm. So water liens need to be taken off the table. There are thousands of water liens in this district. And if we want to make housing affordable, not only home ownership, but to be able to buy, because you cannot have affordable rents without affordable housing, affordable home ownership. That means maintaining the building, the water bill, the gas bill. So we need to have those prices drove down. They cannot remain high. And we need to work with everyone in the community, not just a few constituents. And we can't deal with this attacking each other. And going to people's homes is an act of terrorism. That's what they used to do in the South. And we cannot have that here.
All right. It's time for Senator Brisport to respond.
Sure. Two things. One is a point of clarification. I heard the Reverend say that Assemblymember Latrice Walker was not a supporter of good cause eviction, but she is indeed a co-sponsor of the bill. So I just want to clarify that. And two, I already explained this to the Assemblywoman. People who did a demonstration outside of her home. I did not send them. I did not send anyone to Assemblymember Walker's home or office. I believe, there are protests pretty consistently outside the home of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. I don't send those people either. And if you want to accuse me of the people demonstrating outside Supreme Court justices' homes, I don't send them either. So I want to clear the record that I am not sending people to protest at homes. And I do think it's a distraction from the fact that the real attack on working class people and housing in this community is the influence of real estate developers who want to gentrify our communities and turn central Brooklyn into a sea of glass skyscrapers. And that is why, again, my campaign has refused to take any donations from real estate developers.
Senator,
I'd like to just say,
did you know about that protest in front of Assemblywoman Zinnerman's home and City Council Lori Cumbo's home? Did you know about it? Did you know people were going there?
I did not know, and thank you for reminding me. I did not know people would be going to Assemblymember Zinnerman's home. In fact, the reason why I left the VITA meeting was to attend a UFT meeting. This can be confirmed with District Manager Henry Butler, who I explained I would need to leave early for the meeting, and from my post on social media showing that I was at the UFT meeting.
Yes, but your supporters just conveniently came after you left and disrupted the meeting. Henry Butler was actually outraged at the display. But let's move on to a more important point. The fact of the matter is small property owners are not developers. Jabari Brisport, Senator, you do not respect, you do not agree, you do not think that the free market can produce affordable housing. But one of the things that you don't understand, which is a basic lesson in economics, that where there's scarcity, the prices go up. Right now, small property owners are providing most of the affordable housing in this community, in the district. And you talk about developers. Well, that's right. We've got some unscrupulous developers, and we have to hold developers' feet to the fire. We have to make sure that developers are producing the kind of affordable housing that they're getting tax breaks to produce. But the fact of the matter is, you're a teacher, I'm a preacher and a teacher. We don't build housing. And so we have to work with scrupulous developers, responsible developers. We have to make sure you are a senator in the state of New York. Our budget is over $200 billion. We have to make sure that African-American developers get an opportunity to build and develop affordable housing in the 25th, from Fort Greene all the way to Brownsville. That's what the senator should be doing in Albany, and not grandstanding and trying to score political points.
Reverend Tillard, okay, thank you. Sorry.
And response?
Yeah, and then I hope at some point y'all get to ask the questions that you wanted to ask in this discussion. But a few things. We have over 90,000 homeless people in this city, and I think it's quite clear that market-based solutions don't work, and that the free market is not producing affordable housing. In fact, we have that baked into the language. We call things affordable or market rate, because what the market produces is not affordable. And the fact of the matter is, when real estate developers want to invest in candidates, Reverend, you have $7,500 from Striving for a Better New York, which is a real estate backpack. You have $4,000 from a man who worked at Citigroup managing their portfolio, including real estate money, and $1,000 from another PAC that fought against the rent regulations. When we have real estate trying to buy elections, it's scary, because we know that there is a lot of money invested in pushing Black people out of our district and making this community into a playground for the rich.
Well, I have to respond to that, because not only is that disrespectful, it just has it shows a fundamental misunderstanding of who I am. I'm a grassroots community pastor. I have no connections with the real estate industry. As I said, I am a renter as you are. And I'm deeply concerned about affordable housing in this community, and I have fought for that. I've worked with church groups that have formed community development corporations in order to build affordable housing. But the fact of the matter is, and I know this is something that disturbs you, Senator Brisport, it is only the free market. It is the free market that produces all of the housing that we live in, with the exception of public housing. And public housing is a place that we have to give more attention to, because the conditions in most public housing units and developments is not satisfactory. And we don't want the citizens of the 25th living in the conditions that they're living in public housing. So all other housing in this country is produced by the private market, the free market.
And Renee would like to say something, please.
One of the things that we can do, and that I would do as a state legislator in the Senate, we can raise the amount of vouchers. You are giving people vouchers for rents that they can't even use. The amount of the voucher is less than the amount of the apartment. And so you have people sitting, there's 96,000, so they say homeless people. There's a lot of hidden homeless too, because people are double up with their family members or friends. So the amount of the voucher needs to meet the market rent. And another thing for NYCHA, a lot of NYCHA now is being privately developed or privately ran. We need to have accountability and transparency. And so we could make sure that there is affordable housing. We need to find out what happened to all that money that was slated for NYCHA. So before we start moving on with all these other policies, we need to solve the problems that we have in the past. We can't keep throwing money at things and things keep piling up. We can't keep saying we're allotting money. However, we're not receiving it. There are homeowners, even renters, who have not received this COVID-19 funding. So we need to move on, but we also need to make sure that we are addressing the needs of the public, not doing lip service and not this infighting, because nothing is getting done. And we need to work collaboratively with the people in our community, all facets of the community, not just one.
If I could just say one last thing about housing, if that's possible. When Senator Brisport talks about Black and brown homeowners being run out of the district, and that is certainly true. And I've been a pastor here for many years, and I understand how the prices are going up. But there's another side of that story. And many of my members and many African Americans in this district bought homes in the 70s, in the 80s. They paid $30,000, $40,000, $100,000 for them. They've raised a family in those homes. They've gotten everything you can possibly get out of an asset. Maybe for 10 or 15 years, they couldn't give them away. And now they have decided that at 60 or 70, they no longer want to hold on to a brownstone, and they're selling it for 1.8 million or 2.3 million. This is creating Black wealth. And many of those seniors and many of those public civil servants are taking their pension, their $2 million, they're going back down south where they came from. This is also a part of the story. And so we need not have always a doom and gloom message. We need to talk about the empowerment that's taking place in the community as well.
Who are they selling those homes to?
Well, they're in market terms, they're selling them to people who are buying high and will hope to one day sell high. But the Black owners that are leaving those homes, and many of them are my neighbors and members, they bought low, they sold high. That is the American dream, and that is the American way. And so if you're going to bring unity, as Renee is talking about, I welcome many of the new homeowners in the district. They have come into the district, they purchased an asset, but that Black family that left also left with wealth. And so Mr. Brisport has to understand that that's a part of the conversation about housing in our community.
And may I add, and I'm sorry for adding, I disclosure, I covered Bed-Stuy for our Time Press for 5 years, that many of these homes were bought during the age of redlining. Black people were not allowed to buy in other parts of Brooklyn. They literally were put in these neighborhoods, said these are the neighborhoods you could buy in. And now these properties are worth millions of dollars. And the third party transfer system, which is something I'd like to ask about as well, is it appears that there seems to be ways both market and nonprofit developers appear to be, we've done investigative story, undermining some of these Black property owners and taking their homes with no equity at all under the name of affordable housing. And I would like all your views on the third party transfer program. I would like to know if you think it should be abolished, kept, or changed.
Well, I tell you what, we need more oversight on predatory developers. We need to have more oversight on deed theft and title theft. And these are the things that I will go to the Senate and be concerned about. I will not be attempting to reconfigure our economic system. This is a capitalist system. Most of the people in in fact, all of the people who work in the 25th Senate District are participating in the capitalist economy. If they get a check.
Someone else's attempt. I'm sorry, Reverend.
All right, I'm sorry.
You need to.
Renee.
The third party transfer system needs to be abolished. And the reason it needs to be abolished is because there's a lot of corruption in there. I don't know if you remember Wendell Walters, who was the commissioner of HPD in 2001. And he went to jail briefly for the false transfer of properties. I personally know of someone whose property was stolen. And when we talk about affordable housing and these non-for-profits, we have to look at the whole gamut, because it's not just the developers, it's not just HPD. And when I was working with some of these seniors and tenants, it was also the court system, the judges.
Right.
So when we talk about oversight of this situation, we need to make sure that we're going to hold people fully accountable.
Absolutely.
Not only at HPD, in our city offices, and right down there in housing court. This was a scam that stole wealth from families generationally. People are still feeling the impact of it today, and people are not talking about it. HPD is still, there have been cases misrepresenting information and taking people's homes. That is theft. And they're going to continue to do it, because the community and our elected officials are not holding people accountable. People are being told to sue civically. That's a problem when there's a law on the book for theft, because if you sue, that means you have to come up with money, you have a lawyer, and that's just a way to discourage you. So the third-party transfer program needs to be abolished. It needs to be revisited, and it needs to have accountability to give people back their homes that was stolen.
Thank you, Renee. Would you like to add anything, Senator, to this?
Yeah, just that, like my colleague said, the entire system needs to be overhauled and revisited. You have people losing their homes and losing their wealth. Truthfully, the real scourge in the district, though, I just do want to reiterate, is the fact that there is a lot of interest in making a quick buck off of Black people who want to live here. And if we believe that housing is a human right and we want to keep people in their homes, then we simply cannot be taking real estate money. And, one of my competitors, the Reverend, has taken thousands of dollars from Striving for a Better New York PAC, a real estate and Trump supporter and Republican-backed PAC, and also $4,000 from a man who did real estate portfolios for Citigroup.
So
Well,
Senator
again, I just want to
do you
say,
think third-party transfer programs should be abolished?
Overhauled. I'll collaborate with my partners in city government to come to a solution. But I honestly, this is a place where I would like to hear more on, because I want to collaborate and hear more from what constituents are saying about it.
and I want to say that my support comes from the residents of the district, small donations. My support comes from people that feel that we can have better representation in the 25th. And you took some money from Bernie Sanders and AOC, and a lot of your money comes from Greenwich and Cambridge. So I think we should both recognize I have a diversity of friends. I have some people who have donated to me that I don't even know. And I think that's more of a reflection on your leadership than mine. I don't have any history with the real estate industry. I'm simply a pastor and a professor at City College. But lastly, on the housing situation, one of the reasons as a pastor that I organized forums with Bridge Street Development Corporation, and the focus was how to transfer an asset. Because let's face it, in our community, we have a lot of wealth, and we have to learn how to transfer those assets, how to plan. And one of the most revealing answers came out of that forum, those forums, we had a series of them. When do you begin to transfer an asset? When the child is 18 or 21, some people answered, and the professionals that gathered to convene that summit reminded us, you do it as soon as you purchase it. And so that's what we got to do. We got to get Black folks to be smarter, working class people to be smarter in transferring their assets.
All right, we have been talking about this for approximately 38 minutes.
Okay.
And
there are
I
other
think,
issues.
yes, and I think the people that are listening to this, and by the way, I hope they will send us in questions, because we would love to be able to get some of those answered.
Mhm.
But I think we should address some of the other concerns that people have. And one of those, of course, is about safety.
Mhm.
How do we make sure people are safe on the streets of not only the 25th district, but all over New York City and all over the state of New York, which is, of course, a responsibility that I think somebody in the legislature has. We want to make sure we want to get guns off the streets. We want to make sure kids are safe going to school. What would your programs be, and what, Senator Brisport, would you be doing to make sure that people who currently do not feel safe in the city of New York, how would you make them feel that they could be? What could you do?
Yeah, my heart breaks every day for the people of this district, because they don't feel safe. They're worried about gun crime. They're worried about other types of crimes. And in response to it, I see lots of politicians doubling down on failed policies and failed strategies. There was a really horrific incident that happened about 2 years ago in Bed-Stuy, where a 1-year-old was shot and killed. And as a response, police officers were stationed at the site of the murder, basically 24/7. And a few months later, there was another shooting half a block away. And what I keep seeing is that we keep investing into police budgets, a bloated, ballooning police budget that is not making us safer, meanwhile defunding other social services like schools and their after-school programs.
Are you suggesting that the police should be defunded?
I absolutely believe that money should be transferred from the police budget into things that actually make us safe. Mental health care programs, after school programs, violence interrupters, de-escalation programs, safe supported housing, addiction services, all of those. And in my role as a state legislature, I've worked with the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian caucus to push, to advocate for additional funding for these. My office itself has allocated $150,000 for violence interrupters throughout the district, like Kings Against Violence Initiative, the Bro Experience, SOS, Man Up NYC, both sides of the violence.
What did you say? Balance interrupters? What is that?
Sorry, violence interrupters. These are credible messengers who can go through the community, either de-escalate things before they happen, or in the case of CAVI, they do hospital-based violence interruption, where they go and speak to, the victims of gun crimes in the hospital to work with them there, do mediation, so that when they come out, the cycle can be averted.
Let me say that as a pastor, I am a violence interrupter. That's one of the reasons why I earned the name the hip hop minister, because I've proven in the course of my career that I'm not afraid to talk to young people, to sit young people down, and to help them resolve their conflicts. I agree that we need to reallocate some of the funds that the police department now has in its budget to deal with issues like mental illness, other sort of issues that are not in the purview of police officers to deal with. And I think that it is actually a disservice to the concept of reallocating monies to appropriate places to talk about defunding the police. Because the fact of the matter is, we need to have well-funded police departments that have the tools that they need. Senator Brisport has, as an activist and even as a sitting senator, jousted and used to score points, playing to the cheap seats, the whole concept of we need to defund the police, we need to abolish the jails, we need to release prisoners. And one of the reasons why that's important is that there was a vibrant 68-year-old grandmother killed on Ralph Avenue. And instead of Senator Brisport going, this is important, Steve, instead of him checking on that family, an 8-year-old boy still in Maimonides Hospital right now. I had prayer with them. I've met with the family. Senator Brisport, instead of seeing about the family, turned to talking points and said, Mayor Adams, who responsibly showed up as a mayor should to see about that family, he said that Mayor Adams was only interested in putting Bed-Stuy residents in cages. And this is the kind of irresponsibility that we can't have in the Senate. Some people want to lock everybody up, but some people don't want to lock anyone up. And we know that prison is a part of life, and we have to have people who are responsible for crimes held accountable. I'll still pray with them and minister with them, but they have to be held accountable.
Thank you, Reverend. Renee, I'm sorry, but Reverend, we need it's three-way, okay?
Yes.
You're muted, Renee.
To have criminal justice reform that takes into account, that is reform, and it includes not only the police officers, but the judges and the court systems and the prosecutors. When we talk about violence in the streets, we need to talk to the young people to find out what's going on with them. And we have to be clear when we're saying defund the police. What aspects are being defunded? And when we're giving funding, my problem with what's going on is there's funding out there that's allocated, but the people are not receiving it, right? We have mental health facilities that are being shut down, that have been shut down, right? There's not enough mental health facilities that have beds. So we can't even refer the people that need help to those places. So we need somebody that's in the Senate that's going to make sure that the funding is going where it needs to be going. We also need our schools to be open. They're an echo center. We need to work with our community-based organizations, to work with our youth, to have plans for them to do. Things for them to do, and also with this drug stuff that's going on. We can't allow people to be lifelong addicts. That's also creating to crime. I'm not saying that all addicts are criminals, but you can't just offer people places where they could shoot up safe, places where they could get clean needles without offering them opportunities to get off of drugs. We need to look at other ways what other countries are doing to help their people stop being addicts. And we need to look at the full gamut of why crime is going. And people do need to be held accountable. Because right now it looks like people think they could do whatever they want to do. And that's a problem. And we need to, guns are not the only thing. So don't just keep it so narrow talking about guns. There's also violence in the schools that's not being addressed. And people are not being held accountable with that. There was a young boy who was killed in a classroom in the Bronx, stabbed to death. And that administrator from the Bronx came to Brooklyn to be an administrator. Where was the outrage with that?
Yeah.
So like one of my students said, does he have to be killed in the streets by the cops before somebody worries about his Black life?
Yeah.
So we need to make sure that we're doing a good job deferring crime and helping our students and our people, not only the students, people need to feel safe. At the end of the day, everyone wants to feel safe. So we're going to allot the money and make sure that the money is being spent.
So, got it. I understand what you're saying, Renee. Thank you for that. Which leads me to the question about bail reform, because that's a hot, thorny issue right now. Senator, you were in, I believe you were in Albany no, you weren't when it was passed in 2019. But does it work? It seems to have an awful lot of issues. Is it doing what it's supposed to do?
Bill reform has passed in 2019, did do what it was supposed to do, which was to even out a playing field. I mean, the whole situation with bail is that you have an unequal justice system. You basically say that one person can wait at Rikers for their trial in inhumane conditions, and another person can wait at home for their trial based on the same accusation, but because one person has $10,000 to post bond and the other one doesn't. And that's not fair.
But let me just say that when bail reforms took effect January 1st, 2020, and judges were supposed to consider a person's ability to pay when setting bail, yet the average bail amounts have risen, not fallen, and people continue to be unable to afford the price of their freedom. And obviously, we're not talking about people who are being charged with violent crimes here. So is it working?
We did see incarceration rates decrease when bail reform was first implemented, but then start to go back up after the rollbacks pushed by Governor Cuomo. So, depending on what you mean by working, if the goal is to reduce incarceration rates, then we're working towards that. There were some rollbacks this year that I voted against, but the goal is to say that everyone should be treated equally by the law, whether you have $1,000 in your bank account or $1 million in your bank account.
But are they? I don't know if they are.
Well, I'd like to say that reasonable people can agree, and I think in principle, I certainly agree with what the senator said. We know that there's a presumption of innocence in our system, and we should not have a system where if you and I commit the same crime and you don't have the bail money and I do have the bail money, I could be at home but for my lack of money. And it's a great law, and I applaud the Black and Puerto Rican caucus and the visionary leaders that pushed for bail reform. But even the best laws sometimes have to be tweaked. And clearly the people in New York City feel under siege. The residents of the 25th from Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Bed-Stuy, and Brownsville are afraid. They are victims of crime disproportionately. And all I'm saying is Senator Brisport has been dug in on this position, as well as letting dangerous criminals out of jail. And we have to be willing to look at what works about bail reform and what doesn't work about it. And we have to go where the evidence leads us. It's right to gather the data as the legislators are doing, but we cannot be dug in and have a predetermined position when the city is clearly not safe. I lived in New York in the crack era of the 90s. I was in New York as a youngster in the 70s, and we don't want to go back to that. And we're going back to that on a roller coaster.
Thank
Renee?
you.
Renee?
Thank you. Bail reform does need to be revisited. We need to make sure that the judges understand the guidelines that they have with the bail reform. And bail reform also must include a part of it that's going to reform Rikers. We need to make sure when we have bail reform that we're looking at the person who's committing the crime. We can't have people thinking that they could just go back and forth and keep committing crimes and they won't be held accountable. That makes the community feel unsafe. The spirit of the law was great, but we need to make sure we're looking at the essence of the law. How is it being applied? How is it being used? Look at the data, who's suffering, because it should not be that people are being re-victimized. We need to make sure that we have opportunities for people to be reformed. If we give them bail reform, yes, they're waiting for their trial. Is there anything else going to help them while they're waiting? Are we going to offer them services? Are we going to mandate that they go to services? You know, we believe that people should be able to live in this community without feeling that they are unsafe. And we also believe that the justice system needs to be fair and impartial, but not at the expense. We can't have reform at the expense of the safety and welfare of the community at large. So bail reform needs to be revisited. It needs to be tweaked. And it needs to take an accountability that at some time, somebody may have to go to jail. And if they have to go to Rikers, we need to reform Rikers as well. So we can't just keep this one thing, one shot thing. We got to look at the whole issue.
I really apologize. I'm keeping the clock on this one. I've been trying and it's just
Go ahead.
all over the place.
At any rate, we only have a few minutes left, so we want last closing statements from you all. So let's start with the senator. And as we wrap things up here this evening, please go ahead.
Sure. Just point of clarification, because I'm hearing right-wing talking points from the other people on this call that the bail reform laws led to an increase in crime. And to be clear, that's been something that's getting hammered a lot by the mayor, by right-wing media, by Republicans. And the fact of the matter is, crime went up as a nationwide trend. Okay, not just in New York. So you can't say that something that happened nationwide happened due to something that only happened in New York. That's not even a correlation, let alone a causation. So I wanted to say that because it's important that we actually pay attention to the facts in the discussion of public safety. But in terms of my closing remarks, I do just want to say I have nothing but gratitude for the incredible people of this district for fighting together. Together we raise taxes on the wealthiest New Yorkers, billionaires and ultra millionaires, to increase the state budget by billions of dollars to invest into our schools, into protections to pay people's back rent, into environmental campaigns. And that was something that happened because we worked on it together. And I know that as we continue to collaborate together, we can go further. We can guarantee childcare to every single person. We can pass the New York Health Act and get every single person healthcare. We can truly address the climate crisis, because I know it was a hot one this week, but that's just the beginning. And people are dying from the climate catastrophe. There's a lot of things to be done, but we need to be doing it together. And it won't come from just one politician acting alone, but from, the working class people of New York rising up and saying, we want to fight against the wealthy, the rich and the powerful, and especially fight against real estate developers who are trying to control New York even more than they do, and also buy this election.
Thank you very much. Renee.
Thank you for this opportunity to present my case to the voters and to your media group. We need to make sure that New York is a viable option for our youth, for our seniors, and for everyone who wants to stay here. And we need to have transparency and accountability. We can't keep passing laws and enacting policies and saying that we pass budgets, but the people are not receiving it. We're done with that. We need to see tangible results in our community, and we need a representative that's not afraid to meet and talk with everyone in the community, whether they agree with you or not. That's what a community is, to agree to disagree. Work with everybody. As a legislator and even as a public citizen, I don't mind going into the projects. I don't mind going into other places of our community, because that's the community. And we need to make sure that we are not pitting any fraction of our community's voters against voters in our community. That's not going to work. That's going to make people feel disenfranchised. That's going to make people feel unsafe. That's making people feel that their rights are not respected. So as your next state senator, I'm about building a coalition so that New York is a place for everybody. Because at the end of the day, everyone wants to feel safe. Everyone wants a place where they can live, where they can raise their children, where they can work and they can retire. And we're tired of the rhetoric. We're tired of the infighting. We want action. If there's a budget that's passed with billions of dollars, we want to see it in our community. We don't want to hear about it. We want to see it. We want to visibly see it taking form. And we don't want policies that are enacted that are doing harm, more harm to our community than they are doing good. So I'm about a better New York. And if people want a better New York, I will be your candidate that will work with you and will work with the different constituencies in our community to make this a better place for everyone.
Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, I'm going to say, Senator Brisport, this is a Democratic primary. It's unfortunate that you would resort to name calling, characterizing grassroots people who actually have lived in this community a long time and understand the issues of the community as using right-wing talking points. The fact of the matter is, 2 years ago, you were an insurgent. You held the great leadership of Central Brooklyn to a particular standard. We just lost Al Vann, one of the greatest legislators that New York City has ever produced. And you were unkind and uncharitable to the leadership of Central Brooklyn. Well, today, 2 years later, you are the sitting senator, and we have to hold you to the same uncharitable standard that you held those that went before you. Crime is up. Homelessness is up. All of these things are up, and they're up on your watch. And so I'm asking folks on August the 23rd to vote for Conrad Tillard. I have an optimistic vision. As I travel through this district, I find hopeful people. I find people that want to be entrepreneurs and start businesses and have good jobs. And yes, we need to make home ownership available to more people and not argue against the free market. And so I thank you for listening, everyone. And I hope that we will see that on August 23rd, there is an opportunity to have a senator that will meet with everyone. Lastly, I was talking to one of the great pastors who's supporting me, Robert Waterman, pastor of Antioch Baptist Church, but he's also head of the African American and Clergy Association. And Senator Brisport said he would hear the residents of the 25th, but he hasn't even spoken to them, for he never came to any of the meetings. And he told them that he could not come to those meetings because he had a standard DSA meeting on Fridays. And so we need a representative that's more interested in the people of the 25th than being accountable to the DSA. And that's what I represent. I look forward to serving. I thank you for your attention this evening. God bless you. God keep you.
Thank you very much. So we thank all three of you, Senator Brisport, Renee Holmes, the Reverend Conrad Tillard. Thanks so much for sharing your views and being with us this evening. Thanks as usual, Steve, for joining me in this effort. I'm Jane Hanson, and for all of us at PoliticsNY and Schneps Media, we say thank you so much. And don't forget to vote on August 23rd. I think you can start voting on the 13th of August, if I'm not mistaken. Right. And so let's just make sure you vote. I know it's a weird time to be casting a ballot, but you got to do it because it's important. Thank you so much and have a great evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you all.